What up, everybody? It's JP Finlay. It's Beltway Football. We're brought to you by Oarsman Automotive of Virginia. We ride with them. Want you to do the exact same thing. I was at Oarsman Fairfax Toyota earlier this week. My wife's key got damaged. That's what happens when you have children, or a key gets damaged. Doesn't even seem possible. They fixed it for me, lickety split. I was in and out of there in like 10 minutes. Got to see my guy Jaime while we're talking about Oarsman Automotive of Virginia. I set up a round of golf with Bob Biaggi, and then he bailed on it. Everybody that knows Bob, send him a text, harass him. Now, he bailed. Listen to this, boys. Mitch and Peter here. He bailed not because he had something going on the day we were playing golf, but because he was heading out of town the next day and needed to pack.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Pete and I had to bail on Bob on Thursday because of minicamp last week. Was it retribution, you think?
Maybe that's what's going on here.
Might have a vendetta against the pod.
Like if this was young single JP and I had a date lined up and the date canceled on me because she had to pack for a trip the next day, I would clearly feel like, all right, this chick's just not into me, right?
Yeah. Maybe Bob's just not into you.
I mean, maybe we cracked the code. I don't know.
Yeah.
So a little bit of ownership news, and this, you guys will laugh at this. It was a dude from Sports Business Journal, I think. Ben Fisher, I want to say, but don't quote me on that. Maybe Pete could pull it up. The NFL sent a memo out with 2 dates for a possible meeting to approve the sale, either July 20th or August 8th. Both of those are kind of in line with what I had heard. I've been saying all along before the first preseason game, everything's finalized. First preseason game is August 11th. What you guys will laugh about is we had a vacation plan for August 10th through the 15th. Shelby's swim team, blah, blah, blah. We had to change it from July 10th through the 15th. We had to change it from July 17th through the 22nd. So, of course, this meeting will now be July 20th.
Yeah, I'm on Cape Cod duties from July 15th to the 22nd. So, Mitch, maybe you can just do a solo pod for JP and I when the biggest news in franchise history comes down.
We'll just throw a one-man pod party.
I think we will all be able to
yeah, we'll make it happen. But gather. I'm sorry to hear that, JP. A lot of your vacations in past years have been interrupted. You've had to go to random TV stations. You've had to do calls from rooms in your vacation homes with bad service. So I feel for you.
I'm not looking for sympathy. I just think it's funny. Like no matter what, I sound like Chris Russell, so I'll just shut up. But I think there's a decent chance the owners just do this on Zoom. I heard that going back as far as Dallas, like 2 owners meetings ago. I just think they're kind of over, or maybe no. Where was the big one? Arizona?
Minnesota?
Yeah. Minnesota was the little one where I just think like if you're Clark Hunt and you're vacationing in Switzerland, do you really need to fly back to approve something that everybody's approving? Like they have the technology. Like my man that owns Walmart, where do you think he vacations? Bora Bora? Does he need to fly back to Cincinnati for a meeting?
It's also as simple as, yes, I vote yes.
Right.
Like it's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's a lot of back and forth and debate. And hopefully they meet July 20th to discuss via Zoom and then vote on August 8th and doesn't ruin anyone's vacation. It's just right smack dab in the middle of training camp.
No, hopefully it's just August 8th. We don't need a meeting for a meeting. As people that have worked in media bureaucracies before, we don't need a meeting for a meeting.
You know, we work at companies and places that love meetings just for the sake of meeting.
No, it's a meeting to plan the meeting.
Right.
Dude, it's like the cleaning lady's coming. You've got to clean. I'm like, well, what's the cleaning lady coming for? Why do I have to clean?
Just fire up a group chat and say thumbs up or thumbs down this, and it should take 5 minutes. There should be no agenda. There should be no planes. Let's save the environment. Let's save everybody's time and just thumbs up or thumbs down. Do you want Dan Snyder out of here?
If they fire up the group chat, who's the one owner that has an Android that screws everybody in the
Ursay by a million?
100% Ursay. No questions asked.
People with green phones think it's so ridiculous how people with blue phones feel. Let me be clear to the people with green phones. You're the worst.
Yeah, we hate you, and we don't like to text you, and you miss out on a lot of plans because of it. So go after yourselves.
Although I have a buddy who I've voiced this to, and he's like, you know how happy it makes me that I'm left off group texts and that I don't have to FaceTime and all these other things. So I do think I think the green phone world, maybe there's like a price option that's a part of it. Maybe there are people that are like, oh, I need the Google Pixel 19 because of the camera. Like, good for you. But I think there's a subset of these folks that are just like, I don't want to be able to do all the dumb stuff with all the people. Like, I don't need 19 people from high school on a group chat. So I can respect that.
Yeah.
Mitch had a good idea. So the spring workouts are done. The off-season workouts are done. Players get their biggest break now until training camp. Talked to some guys. Antonio Gibson's going to take his family to Hawaii. Percy Butler, I randomly talked to, is trying to put a trip together. He did St. Thomas a few years ago, I guess last year, and would love to do that again. This is the time where guys get to enjoy themselves a little. I guess you heard the two of us. I'm going to North Carolina. Pete's going to Cape Cod. Where are you going, big man? You're going to Montreal?
I'm going to Montreal this week for the
F1
F1 race on Sunday. I'm quite excited. I think it's going to be a hell of a party.
Dude, you should try to connect with Danielle Verbin.
I didn't even think about that. You're right. I should.
Oracle's like a major sponsor. I don't know if she's going to Montreal, but I know she went to Miami, and is Austin already happened maybe?
Mitch will be driving the pace car before we know it, if that's even a thing in F1.
As a big man in one of those cars, but I'd love to see.
I would do everything I could to shimmy my way into that thing.
You ever play Mario Kart when
Bowser?
I was gonna say Donkey Kong, but whoever that guy. All right, so good idea from the big man here. Player who impressed you and a player who disappointed you during the spring workouts. Well, voluntary OTAs and mandatory minicamp. Young Peter and his wife Peter start us off.
Yeah, I don't look nearly as ripped in this thing as I was hoping. Maybe it's just a bad angle. My arms look super bony. Regardless,
give us one of these. Let's see what you got. Still don't look that ripped. You look fairly ripped, but you're like flexing by the end of that.
Yeah. Regardless, another guy who looks bony but is way more athletic and in better shape than I am is Emmanuel Forbes. I think he impressed me the most. Still some questions, of course, about the tackling. There's one sideline scene during OTAs where he was about to collide with Brian Robinson, but they veered off because it's no tackling. And Randy Jordan screamed, "Oh, I can't wait for that," implying that he can't wait to see Forbes have to tackle a running back of Robinson's size. But the coverage, the ball skills are undoubtedly there, and he's 18-1 for Defensive Rookie of the Year. I'm just throwing that out there. I think a pick six or two and a few more interceptions like Sauce Gardner has this guy really become a darling of like advanced stat people, film people. I think Forbes has everything you need on defense.
I'm telling you, how high Pete is on Emmanuel Forbes has me nervous because Pete doesn't have a great track record. I agree. He looked really good. He looked really good all camp long.
He looked really good, and the tackling concerns, not to compare him to Dion or Darrell Green or a lot of great corners, didn't tackle much. Like, that's not what you're paid to do. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, Pete, what would be your letter grade on your guys you're really excited about track record?
B-.
B-?
D-. And even that might be a little generous too.
You know, I think a D- is fair, pal. You don't need to go lower than that. All right. Are you doing disappointed, or does we'll go around?
Let's go around the horn.
All right, big man, what do you got?
I've won a little bit off the radar, but I'm going to go with Cam Curl. I love what he did this offseason, the offseason program, the fact that he showed up and, participated in some individual drills and then worked off, on the back during the team stuff. I think that's the exact right way to handle this situation. I think, we saw it last year with Deron Payne and, it worked out well. I think it's exactly what you need to do when you're in a contract situation. You're there for all the team stuff, all the meetings, all the camaraderie, all the learning that you can do in the offseason program, while also not really putting yourself in a risk in a position to get injured. And so I was super impressed with Cam. He easily could have sat at home and pouted and been a storyline that he wasn't there. And the fact that he showed up and was also engaged when he was there during the team 11-on-11 stuff, he was either working, 15, 20 yards back kind of going through his own drops, or he's on the sideline, talking with the other safeties and corners and DBs and stuff like that. I love the way he handled it, and I thought to me, that I like that he stood out.
I love the way you handled that, Mitch. That was an interesting off the radar pick, but I agree with you. Very mature from Cam.
Somebody asked us this, and I think maybe it was Nikki. Do you think he has to get a different size helmet with the haircut?
Probably.
That's a lot of hair, dude, and those dreads kind of like pile up.
Yeah, maybe just some extra padding in there to make it fit a little snugger, but I bet it's an adjustment for him. He does look a lot different, clearly.
Nobody works the field guys and the equipment guys quite like the big man. I think that's a prime big man offseason investigation exploration.
I think I can get an answer. I bet he does have a bigger helmet and actually has extra side padding because he's got to get the height to get the hair underneath.
Right, but now it's gone.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying it's a different helmet altogether.
All right, we're on it.
We'll get it.
We'll find that here.
Beltway football exclusive. JP, who impressed you?
I thought Dotson looked really good. And that maybe isn't a surprise, but last year, rookie, we're not sure what to expect. I think now we know kind of what he can be and how much of a weapon he can be. You got to hope he stays healthy, but I had heard when Bieniemy got the job that he obviously loved Terry, but he thought Dotson could be a lot more. And I think it might have been Fortier's story. So there's some misconceptions about the difference between Scott Turner's offense and what we may or may not see with Bieniemy. There was this Warren Sharp stat earlier in the week that the Skins were top 5 in the NFL in vertical passing on early downs in the offense. And I retweeted it with an information, my opinion or whatever. And all these people are man, that's a lie. They never went deep. No, you're incorrect. Go back and watch. They went deep all the time, especially early in the game. They would try to take deep shots, set the tone. Scott's offense was about verticality. And I think the flip side of that was they used a lot of motion, but it was generally kind of fake motion where a guy would go in motion, but then come back to the same spot that he lined up from. I think it was Fortier's story that talked about the amount of motion. I don't know that we call it Bieniemy's offense. It certainly will be this fall, but in the Andy Reid system, because if you go look at Doug Peterson and Matt Nagy and what other people have run off of Andy's system, it's motion to new spots. And I think because of that, I think you're going to see Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin way, way, way more interwoven, lining up on the left hash and ending up in the right slot. I think there'll be just so much more actual movement. I think you'll see Samuel, what we see a million times, Samuel line up in the backfield and then motion up into the away slot. I think the weak side slot, I think you'll see a lot of that. But I think you're going to see Dotson all over the place. And I think because of his slipperiness and kind of his ability to get yak and not in Terry's kind of a tough guy, yak guy. And whereas Dotson, I think, is make a move, get a little extra yardage guy. I would just describe Dotson more slippery than Terry, if that makes sense. I just think he could have a really big year. Health's an issue, but I don't know. The guys in fantasy drafts that I would really be keeping an eye on late would be Dotson, AG, and Logan Thomas. And I'm not backing away from that. I thought Dotson of the 3 of those kind of stood out the most. And I think there's real reason to be excited there. So we can go quick hitter, other impressive. I thought Cody Barton was better than I was expecting. He did have to come off one day to kind of get his calf rubbed down or something, but it was, June 1st or whatever. I don't think it's really a concern. Because I think Mitch went, you guys both went defense. So there's my defensive one. Cody Barton looked a little more athletic, quicker, whatever than I thought. But we also saw more of him because we didn't see any Jamin. If you want to go to the side of the ball real quick.
Just real quick on the Jahan Dotson. I think, we look at Curtis Samuel, especially last year, and thought about kind of his slipperiness and then how they were going to kind of use him in the offense. I think at this point, Jahan Dotson might be more of that guy, more of that gadget player. He might not get handoffs per se, but I think gadget player in terms of how they move him around the offense. And I think that's exciting because I think we saw Dotson do a really good job of moving around. My offensive guy, another Cole Turner, I thought looked really good again. He looked really good last year in the offseason program, and obviously it's a different ball game when you get into the season. But I really liked him down the seam. They seem to use him a fair amount in the middle of the field, and especially against some of the smaller linebackers that the Commanders, smaller, quicker linebackers that the Commanders are trying to deploy on him. I think he did a good job of bodying up and using his size to out jump them for balls. And then when they put him on the bigger guys, I thought he used his speed well to get open. And so I thought he looked really good again. And I'm hoping that Cole Turner can stay healthy and can be an impact player on this offense.
Yeah, I agree with both those, Dotson and Turner. I think Dotson is, if healthy, can be pretty much close to Terry, and that duo can be one that catches some people off guard as like one of the better ones in the NFL. It all comes down to Howell, of course, but the skill of those two guys, the way they complement, but also have varying little specialties, makes them just so much fun to watch. My offensive guy, real quick, will be Logan Thomas, a different tight end. I don't think he's ever going to maybe get the full speed back, but from his ACL injury, but he also never really needed that. I just think Howell seemed very comfortable throwing to him. When Logan was covered, he just throws it up top and Logan's able to go get it. He's very tall and very strong and doesn't really drop the ball if it hits him in the hands. He's able to secure it and pull it away. And a couple drops here and there when he's
hands of steel, big man. I see you smiling.
I was gonna let Pete finish his point, but yes, hands of steel.
Yeah, hands of steel, exactly. A couple drops when when it's easy, but it seems like in the contested situations, Logan just locks in those hands of steel, puts it in a safe, and changes the code. And you can't get it. So the tight ends, I think I said this on the last episode of JP. As long as they don't suffer another injury, I still think it can be a functional group with maybe some really good stuff from Logan and Cole Turner, especially in the middle of the field.
I think real quick, Chase Young, I thought looked really good. He looked smooth running. Like you can only see so much in the shorts and t-shirt from the O-line, D-line guys, but Chase being out there obviously was good to see, but I thought that he seemed to be moving extremely well and seemed confident, both planning on his right and left leg. So for whatever that's worth, I thought that's worth pointing out because obviously there's been so much, concern about him being there and what he's going to look like and is he healthy and all these different things. So for whatever it's worth, I thought that was important to point out.
Big boy brace on that knee. I don't necessarily like where I'm at with Cole Turner, but I am in a let's see it first phase because dude killed it in training camp last year, and I get he was a rookie then, and maybe he kind of knows the physicality or whatever, but I got to see it before I jump on Cole Turner has a natural ability to get separation. He was a wide out in college. Like I get all of the reasons for excitement there. I'm gonna have to see it. Disappointed. I don't know that I could declare myself disappointed in anyone from spring workouts, but we can go around here. I'll
start on defense. Jamin Davis had an injury had a surgery that we didn't necessarily know about until kind of the start of camp. And, we've seen what these injuries with the Commanders and across the league, whatever you want to say, have been, and they're confident that he's going to be back for the start of training camp. I got to see it. Just like you said with Cole Turner, I got to see it before I believe it. Jamin made a nice step from rookie year to last season, and he's got to take another big step here, especially.
He made a step.
That's what I said. He made a step, but he's got to make a big step now that they did very little to address the linebacker position. They're putting pressure on him. They're saying, Jamin, you got to be the guy. And, coming in off an injury and not being 100% when they start working out ain't a great place to start. So I was disappointed that he wasn't able to be out there and that, that he's dealing with whatever injury he's still dealing with from last year.
Let's see if we agree here. On a Jamin Davis scale of what a first-round linebacker should look like, I think you're expecting a 9 out of 10, right? I mean, you're expecting somebody pretty damn good, right?
But certainly by year 3, you want a 9 out of 10.
So his rookie year, he's a 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, based on that?
2, like really low.
And then last year, 6?
Yeah, 5 to 6.
Yeah, I was going to say a 5.
Overloaded failure to okay, he can at least function in the NFL, but he wasn't anything that special. Certainly didn't have any takeover games. He had flashes, but I hate the word flashes. And It's not good enough for a first-round player.
Yeah, this year has to be a big step for him because next year they're going to have to figure out the fifth-year option for him, and then you get into all that talk. I mean, this is a big season for him, and coming in,
the way it's tracking right now, hell no, you're not picking up that option.
I'm saying that's why it's a big year for him this year to start figuring out what he's going to be for this team.
Those Celsius cans look like White Claws, and I feel like JP's just slugging White Claws at 9:45. But no, he's just getting energized for his.
Let's put this one on the YouTube. We keep talking about it. My YouTube page, JP Finlay DC. Subscribe to it. We're putting this on.
Okay, I will send it to you right after.
I may just give you my password and let you do it, but we'll figure that out.
That's okay.
I've gotten very good at WeTransfer. If you just WeTransfer it to me, I know what to do.
Cool. We'll do that. My disappointing player, and again, yeah, nobody out there was like having just this miserable camp where it's like this guy doesn't belong on the field, but more so from what I didn't see, and it was De'Ami Brown. Number one, he's just stuck on a depth chart that's pretty deep. He's at best the fourth guy on there, and he hasn't really done much to justify going above the other three. And I think you could hold on to like the slimmest of hopes that he and Howell would Tar Heel it up together, but I just didn't sense that when we were out there. Didn't really pop. Doesn't still. I mean, he runs in a straight line pretty well, but it's not like he's pulling away. It feels like it takes him a while to get going in that direction, and then he hits top speed around 10 or 20 yards. But he's just a one-trick pony that doesn't even really do the one trick that well. So for him to justify the third-round pick they spent on him feels like he is a long way away. Probably will never get there, and unless Bieniemy or Bobby Ingram can somehow crack this De'Ami Brown code, I don't expect any sort of breakout from a guy who a lot of people were excited about when he arrived.
What's funny is I don't disagree with anything you've said, but I also thought he looked the best and most active we've seen him in his 3 years here.
Yeah. I mean, he had, I think
4 years, 3 years.
This is his third year. I forget the exact number. I think he had 5
There
or
were
6
times where there were times where Howell would hit him. You'd be like, oh, remember those two went to college together?
Yeah.
And like everybody on the damn sideline would say it.
Right. Yeah, I just don't know what the ceiling is. It's rather low because of the team structure and because of his individual play. I just don't know what a successful year for De'Ami Brown looks like, other than maybe like 20 catches and 2 touchdowns. But that's not good enough for someone you drafted that high.
All right. I started with the caveat that I don't think it's fair to have a disappointing player in spring workouts. Now I got to come up with one, I suppose. They've got a hole at left guard, and this kind of maybe dovetails into our Chase Young conversation, which I think is nonsense. And like, I do think, I mean, I've said this for years about DB depth and O-line depth. Like, give me a bunch of B minuses rather than an A and some Ds. And I do think they're building the O-line in a manner where they've got a bunch of B minus players that if you get some health should be sustainable. I don't know that you're going to get the sustainable health. I was a little surprised. Leno wasn't at OTAs and stuff with the new offense, young quarterback. I did think he looked good when we saw him at minicamp. I thought he looked like he maybe was down a little bit of weight, quick feet. But I don't want to say I'm disappointed in Chris Paul and Sadiq Charles because I think they're Chris Paul and Sadiq Charles. And maybe if you want to go back in time and like revisit the hype around the Sadiq Charles pick. I mean, if you recall, they had just lost Trent Williams. They're like, well, we might have found his replacement. Like, nah, you didn't. I think at this stage, not knowing what the quarterback's going to be, I think you can look at the roster and say left guard's the biggest hole. So I guess I'd be disappointed there.
Yeah.
Disappointed for Armani Rogers, not at him, but for him. Talent, like, kid with a ton of potential. You hate to hear an Achilles in that situation. I don't know. How are those?
Really good.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you on the O-line for the most part. I think there are a bunch of Bs across the line. The starting group might be a little optimistic, but certainly now's the time to be optimistic with it all. Another small disappointment I had was Jacoby Brissett, not necessarily with you know, making bad throws and whatnot. Just the amount of checkdowns that they were doing in shorts and a t-shirt. Now's the time of the year to take chances and to get a feel for your receivers and how well they track deep balls and all that kind of stuff. And granted, he was working mostly with the second team, but there were a lot of checkdowns from Jacoby, and maybe he was playing at a little more real than Sam Howell was in terms of the amount of time he spent in the pocket before he got rid of the ball. But now's the time of the year that I want to see, I want quarterbacks and receivers to start getting on the same page. I'm not concerned about quarterbacks and running backs getting on the same page in the receiving game. I want to see the quarterbacks and receivers do it. And just too many reps with Brissett ended with him checking the ball down to a running back or to Chris Rodriguez.
On a play that likely would have been dead.
Right, on a play that likely would have been dead. But take your shot, see what they got, get used to see how these guys react to the ball in the air, see where they're good at tracking, who's good at tracking the ball over what shoulder. And, those are the different things I think you can kind of learn even on a dead play when you just release one downfield. My
counter, much like Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul, don't be disappointed. That's just who they are.
Right.
That's an Alex Smith type of dude. All right, let's get to this Chase Young thing because it's 9:49 a.m. There's a report out of Pittsburgh. The guy's name is Jeff Hartman, and he writes for the Steelers SB Nation site. So you take however much salt with that you want.
That's where all this started. Oh, gosh.
I am not familiar with this dude's work. I had it yesterday. And the Hogs Haven guys here run a great website, but I don't think they often venture into the per source. I have learned this information. And I think the dude in Pittsburgh is running a similar site. So just so people kind of understand, it's this dude, Jeff Hartman. Source: Steelers are in on Chase Young, but not Dalvin Cook. And this is the kind of really, let's be polite here. Really flimsy is a fair word. Will a deal get, I'm quoting from the story, will a deal get done for Chase Young? A lot still has to happen, but it isn't out of the realm of possibility. So okay, I might hit the lottery too, but I don't think they're trading Chase. I don't think there is, if you're Ron Rivera and the upside of Chase Young is so high that any sort of draft pick you're going to get, I think what's realistic is maybe a fourth and probably a fifth. It's 1 year for a guy that in the last 2 seasons has played 9 games and registered a sack and a half and a pass deflected. If you're another evaluator, you're not paying for potential on a 1-year deal, especially after you already exercised not to, if you had the 5th year, maybe. And if you're Ron, the draft pick gives you nothing because the probability is you ain't making that draft pick next year. That's just the reality of the situation. So I tend to rule this out wholeheartedly. I do wonder at the draft, if you go back and watch that draft video they put out of how they were really happy once they got to pick Forbes and it came down to Forbes or Gonzalez, they knew they were going to get one of the top stud corners at 16. And they're like, all right, we don't have to move. But go back and look at that moment where Ron and Mitch, maybe you brought this up on the pod or just in person or something, but go back and look at the moment when Ron goes to Del Rio when the Packers took Lucas Van Ness. He's like, yeah, they took Van Ness. And in that moment, and maybe we're reading way too much into it, but in that moment, it looked like Del Rio got punched in the stomach. So maybe there was some real interest in the Iowa D end. And if they're taking a first-round D end on the same day they elect not to pick up Chase's contract, then you got to wonder if a trade would have happened that weekend. But they didn't take him. That didn't happen. They drafted, where'd my guy from Clemson? Is that a 5th round, 4th round?
5th round. 5th and then 7th round with Andre Jones.
Right. So they didn't draft a direct replacement for Chase. So I just don't see draft compensation helping Ron, who needs to win this season. The only avenue I can see is clearly they like Leno. They went and signed Wiley. They went and signed Gates. Cosme is a second rounder from 2 years ago. Like, he should be able to deliver for you. Maybe get a legit starting left guard available, and it's a player for player swap. I don't see any of this happening, but that's the only avenue that I think would even make sense or be entertained. And I'm not even sure how entertained it would be.
Imagine going back to 2020 and telling JP Finlay of that year, hey, the ending to Chase Young's career in Washington will be trading him for a starting left guard. It'd just be so crazy, but it's where we're at. But yeah, I think whatever is worse than pennies on the dollar, tenths of pennies on the dollar, that's what you get for Chase Young. The potential to get to the ceiling, whatever it is, however skinny the ladder is to get to that ceiling, way outweighs whatever Ron would get. The depth isn't that good behind him necessarily with these rookies who are still unproven. So there's just no reason for it to happen. I'd be pretty damn floored. I know Chase and maybe Ron don't get along great. Maybe there's some disagreements on how things have gone, but still, they need each other this year. On a side note, it is interesting to see how first there's the Bears fan base, now the Steelers, how they're just thirsting for Chase Young. And it's funny how when a player is in a different market and you just kind of know the broad strokes, you're like, yeah, give it to me. But there's a lot of context that goes into all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this kind of ad nauseum. Jeff Okudah got the 5th rounder going from the Lions to the Panthers. Maybe Chase gets a little bit better than that, but probably
that has way more value before the draft, though.
Before the draft,
got that pick.
And they still could have picked up the option, whatever. I think the one place that the only reason in my mind this happens is that Ron is a very principled man and is concerned about culture and all that stuff. If their relationship has devolved to a point where Ron is concerned about an impact, a negative impact that Chase may have in the locker room or amongst the team, which, we're not in the locker rooms yet, so we don't get a chance to really see it. But obviously on the field, what we've seen isn't that. But if Ron feels like it's gotten to that situation, then maybe they move him. But the potential of whatever value you get out of Chase this year is more than whatever you would get out of a draft pick in return. I mean, you're hoping that Chase can return to what we saw, in his rookie season, but ultimately, you're hoping in one hand and whatting in the other.
What?
I've heard that phrase before. I just don't know what it means, but I'm glad you broke it out here.
Hope ain't a strategy. I know that. I do not know the phrase Mitch is talking about, and I'm very curious what he's whatting.
Hoop okay. Is the other thing.
Hoop it is. I want to be clear on this because I really don't like, and I don't think either of you are doing this, but you hear this stuff circling with Chase. I've never seen it. Every time I dig in and if people hear this podcast, they know that I could talk to some people. Like they refute it. I think Chase and Ron are cool. I think from what I understand from behind the scenes at minicamp, Chase had the attitude of they messed up. I'm going to show them. And that's exactly what Ron wants. So I think everything's good. I mean, good is relative, right? Like there's times in your life where your boss is your boss and you don't always agree with everything, but like they're still your boss and Chase is at the precipice of making $25 million a year.
Yeah. $100 million over the next couple of years.
Whatever you say, dude, let me on the field. I'm going to get 12 sacks and get paid. Like that to me is the only real thing that matters here.
Just to be clear, I'm saying I agree with you. I don't know that from what we've seen and what we've heard, that isn't the case. I'm saying to me, that's the only way that it gets to a trade is if they get to if there's a point that they feel like that. But yes, you're right. I agree. I don't think that's something that's happening.
Pete, who's your U.S. Open pick?
Rory McIlroy. Fighting against the forces that have.
You started with the R. I thought it was for sure Rickey.
Yeah.
No, not Rickey. How about you, JP?
Scheffler. I'm about to. You guys saw the account's kind of fat. I'm about to paint the board though. We're gonna have a weekend.
I need to start looking into some stuff. I put in a DraftKings lineup. Tyrrell Hatton is my pick.
Dude, he had 9 birdies on Sunday at the Canadian Open. Maybe 10 if you birdied 18. I mean, what's that pay out?
I don't know. I haven't looked. I haven't put in. It was just a lineup for You know,
Oh,
it's not.
I've only done that for football. I've never done it for golf. One stupid one that I'm going to put in for not a lot of money, but you see, Mickelson is like plus 65,000.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the biggest middle finger you could give ever.
Right, and I mean, dude, Southern California. He was on fire at Augusta. I don't pretend to know that LACC and Augusta are similar, blah, 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 but $20 at plus 65,000 or whatever it is.
Dude, Rory and Phil on Sunday. Get that final pairing, please.
Oh, God.
Oh, I would inject that into my veins.
I will run out to LACC.
Mark for Victor Hovland, too. I'm such a mark for Victor Hovland. I love that guy.
Yeah.
He may never win a major, but I don't know why I like him so much, but I do.
I feel like you two
boy, Denny McCarthy for a top 10 who's been playing well and is one of the best putters on the planet. Just for a top 10 is plus 850.
This is the problem with golf betting. Every bet, you're like, oh, of course, he's so good. And then someone gets cut, some guy gets hurt. There are so many huge payouts, and then you win 1 out of 9, and then you're just cooked.
And then Tom Kim, who hasn't made a cut in the last 2 months, goes out and wins the whole damn thing.
Yep.
That's why you gotta, dude. I'm not gonna bet on anything else till football season. I'll probably bet on this and then the British Open. And if I'm drunk with you two, I'll bet on whatever baseball bets you have going. Like I don't have like the vein where I need the action every night. Like I'm not chasing aces versus wings.
I do.
So, Pete does too. Pete has his book and is keeping track of everything. Here's all I'm saying with Phil. A $20 bet wins you $5,000.
That's tasty.
That is kind of tasty.
Let's go, Phil.
I may throw that in too, just for
no chance he wins. But you're telling me $20 to win 5 G's on a guy that loves giving the middle finger to the universe and telling everybody how smart he is, and just
completing the Grand Slam
on Sunday at Augusta, and he's never won a U.S. Open. All right, we got to go.